Hello, it is Matt O'Leary, and we are back, folks. The English Premier League is kicking off this season, and I thought, what better way to get things going to celebrate that monumental annual event than with an English classic here. So we're going with a band that has a 50th anniversary of one of their most classic albums, and sneak peek, an album that will be featured in this very video. 1960s English culture bred this golden age of music. I don't think anyone's denying that. And with it, this hyper-reference cast of adventurous bands that really form the ABCs of rock and pop music. There's almost endless commentary on this specific period, and there's a lot of cultural commentators and historians that understand that post-war zeitgeist a lot better than myself. If you're not familiar with the Kinks, then first off, how dare you? They were a British invasion rock band that came alive at the same time as the Beatles, and they're kind of a mix of the Beatles' pop sensibilities with the rock and roll of the Stones. Kind of the best of both worlds, in my opinion. But as an American in 2019, that British invasion is still the baseline of my musical taste, and I'd say probably the most salient influence on my own sense of songwriting and melody. The Kinks seem like kind of the runt of the litter, always very popular in their own right, but definitely looking up at the big hitters. The Kinks are, of course, a band that's driven by the Davies brothers. Ray Davies, who is the main songwriter and main vocalist, and then Dave, who's the lead guitarist. Then it's kind of this rotating rhythm section over the years, but I think the period that most people are interested in, and all these albums are going to come from, it was primarily Mick Avery on the drums, and John Dalton and Pete Quaife on the bass. Man, they have a ton of music, 23 albums, and since 1964 when their debut came out, which was made up of mostly cover songs, they were active for 30 plus years. I'm just not up for a full discography review. I probably wouldn't be into some of their later albums, but I haven't given them a chance. Anyway, I'm drawn to the late 60s, which I think, everyone has heard a song or two from these albums, even if you don't know where it came from. So I'm obviously going to be excluding some of the nearest and dearest to your heart. So please tell me why Muswell Hillbillies or Schoolboys in Disgrace is your favorite album, and, fill in my gaps of knowledge here. What other tidbits of information would be interesting? At number 3, it's 1969's, which is widely accepted as one of the best years in popular music. It's 50th anniversary of this album, and quite the undertaking. It's Arthur, or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire. Arthur is a quintessentially British album, commenting on everything from imperialism to nationalism, patriotic duty, war, peace, everything in between. You got some consumerism, you got some class struggles, it's all there. All delivered from the perspective of working class characters. Character study is clearly one of Ray's strengths as a songwriter, and he really manages through these very simplistic lines to dive into the conflicted, troubled psyche of the main character here, Arthur, through the title track, or Brainwashed, and Arthur's renegade son, Derek, on Australia, or Nothing to Say. This album just perfectly outlines the deep human tendency to rebel against the mother, or in this case, England. And the song Drive-In, which is a breezy track about a leisurely drive, really starts this theme of escapism. And then this desire to rebel is taken to its logical endpoint on the next track, where Arthur's family tells of the glories of this sunny, enticing utopia that is Australia. It's very much a part of us, especially younger generations, to be attracted to the foreign and the unknown. The story in this song mirrors the real life story of Ray's sister, Rose, that's it, who moved away at a pretty early age, and it really devastated Ray, and I think he kind of betrays that disapproval with that move through just the shallowness and the snideness of the tone on this song. Australia really represents this liberal freedom and this childish wonder. But it's perfectly clear which side Ray's on in this, and I think that's a theme that will carry on throughout the talk of the rest of these albums, and something I think is very much part of Ray, especially in this time period in his life maybe, is this deep appreciation for tradition. Instead of just shoving this tired flower power agenda on us like pretty much every other band at that moment in time, he does something different, and he sympathizes with all sides of the argument, I guess. He always gives the devil his due. Children They have open minds. It's beautiful, it's wonderful, but they're also very naive and uninformed. Adults are wise and realistic, but also corrupted to a certain extent. You know, if he was taking a more ideological perspective here, he would paint the force of civilization as purely good or purely bad, but I think he's humble enough and intelligent enough to realize he doesn't have all the answers to these questions necessarily, especially because they plagued humanity for ever. Musically, there are some very bold and brash moments kind of reminiscent of The Who on here, like the single Victoria or Brainwashed, but also very introspective, very progressively structured kind of rock opera pieces like Shangri-La or like the great She Bought a Hat like Princess Marina. I love that song. Moving back a couple years, we got number 2. It's the Very Eclectic Something Else. Up to this point in the band's career, this was the most time they'd ever spent on an album, and maybe they were trying to emulate the meticulous giant that was Pet Sounds from a year earlier. It's the most time that Ray ever had to really steep in his songwriting, and that really shows. As a case study on jealousy, the album opens with the very chipper David Watts. From the perspective of a very self-conscious schoolboy, David Watts is the picture of perfection. He's so gay and fancy-free. Then there's Two Sisters, which is just a perfect song to me. It's just 2 gorgeous minutes of this great social comparison story. The song begins with just harpsichord and vocals, and it's so prim and proper and English. Priscilla is the doting wife, you know, doing laundry and making breakfast, and that drudgery of that monotony and routine is just palpable in this song. And she's so jealous of her sister with the luxury flat. Then Priscilla in the middle throws away the dirty dishes just to be free again, and Ray's voice climbs in passion. Then with this brilliant chord change, Priscilla is redeemed and she runs around the house with her curlers on and looks at her children and realizes how grateful she is for them and for the security of her life. Brilliantly, this string arrangement comes in and Priscilla is no longer jealous of her sister. I just love this type of song. You know, I don't think anyone pulls it off as well as Ray Davies. The short little domestic vignette that elevates mundane lives into something truly transcendent. You know, I'm so happy for Priscilla by the end of it. You know, I bet this was so refreshing when the rest of the music scene was on one extended acid trip, reminding us that raising a family is still the most important, glorious, and honorable profession. The best acoustic folk the band ever released is also on this album with No Return and Lazy Old Sun. And Dave Davies comes in and really sets himself apart as well with, I think, his best song, Death of a Clown, which definitely has a Dylan kind of vibe with the very half-assed verse vocal and this kind of rickety 1930s piano sound. Then there's Waterloo Sunset. It's such a simple, incredible melody, and those backup vocals and the clean guitars go down so damn smooth. Again, bringing up these 2 unknown characters to us, but the narrator's kind of watching them from afar, and he just imbues them with so much meaning, and he's watching them with this sentimental surrealness that you only get when you're watching a sunset. I think of the word sonder when I hear this song. Just that emotion. Number 1 is hopefully pretty predictable. It's, I think, far and away their best album, and I'd say top 5 of any British band ever. The Kinks are the Village Green Preservation Society. This is from 1968, so nestled right between Something Else and Arthur, and I think all the albums leading up to this, the Kinks were still very desperate for, to grab their spot in the limelight. While this one was confident and instantly had that cult appeal and was just totally unconcerned with the charts and what anyone thought. And it's hailed by Ray Davies as the most successful ever flop. This one is a nostalgic set of, again, these very short domestic vignettes. Almost every single one a total gem, and just with its own clear sense of identity. We get some creepy children's storybook kind of stuff like Wicked Annabella or Phenomenal Cat, which remind me a lot of Syd Barrett's early solo stuff, but way less drugged and bizarre. We get some classic Baroque pop with almost a Americana sound with these perfect melodies on Animal Farm or Johnny Thunder. We get some goofy rinky-dink romps like People Take Pictures of Each Other, or my second favorite track on the album, All My Friends Were There, with these bouncing, syncopated, circus-esque beats and Ray's very distinctive genteel, kind of nasally vocal tone. Then there are these single-worthy sing-alongs like Starstruck or Picture Book. Picture Book is a great encapsulation of the twisted psychology behind photography and this incessant need we have to take pictures of ourselves and prove that we exist or prove that we were happy once. It's a very simple observation, you know, that for some odd reason we smile in our pictures, and maybe to preserve this pure memory of the past when our actual experience is not that pure or not as happy as we remember it. The kind of dark pessimism of that is balanced out by these sunshiny melodies, but also more escapism like on Sitting by the Riverside. I'm trying to think of a way to honor this album in the way that I feel like it deserves, and it's really hard for words to do that. Do You Remember Walter is not only my favorite Kinks song, but arguably my favorite song ever. I've listened to a lot of music, but I still remember the visceral impact that song had on me when I first heard it. Ray sings this eerie little melody about a childhood friend, Walter, and they're very idyllic coming of age together, you know, playing cricket in the thunder and the rain and smoking cigarettes behind the garden gate. But Walter starts to change, and so does our hero, and you know, what was once so beautiful and carefree and easy is questioned. He asks, "I knew you then, but do I know you now?" and sings this verse where you can just hear the despair in his voice about the mundane adulthood of Walter. Ray's performance is just spot on. I mean, you can hear the tension and kind of the neuroticism in his voice just build slowly, not only in his voice but in the music, just gradually as the song goes along. And it's so short, again, just like 2 minutes long. People often change, but memories of people can remain. The album is such a nuanced and humble and sophisticated look at this tension in their culture between tradition and progression. And in this psychedelic period, Village Green was countercultural in just about every way. It celebrated nostalgia and national identity and traditional values in a time when youth culture was just head over heels for utopianism. It also resisted that utopian urge musically, you know, where everyone else was going for this Eastern spiritualism and Ravi Shankar and stuff, and the Kinks were sticking to good old classic English rock and roll and classical music. And not that there's anything wrong with exploring the sounds of other cultures, but they definitely were doing it differently. You know, Village Green was imploring us not to so hastily just throw out tradition, but at the same time it wasn't resisting progress either, preserving the old ways and protecting the new. And whether they were trying or not, it really resisted singles culture as well. There wasn't really a hit. Village Green, it's bold, it's impeccably executed, and above all, it's just fiercely independent and courageous. And that, folks, along with all the catchy tunes, is why it's number one. Okay, that's it. That's the Kinks. Man, there's so much more to say about that album and all those other albums and everything else they put out, and there's just so much depth to their music, I find, and the lyrics especially, so I urge you to dive into it, because to me it's just this endless treasure trove. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and maybe you can recommend another classic album that I can review. As always, thank you so much for watching.